Hello, everyone. How's it going?
I'm sweating so much.
Bookshop today, making your time after what I'm sure is a busy day of work to enjoy two wonderful authors tonight in conversation. So today we are here to celebrate Annabel Monaghan's summer romance. Congratulations on the new release. Tonight with Allison, Winn, Scotch, who's the author to Birdie Maxwell. It'll be about a 30-minute conversation between the two of you, and then we can open it up to a nice Q&A. And then we have plenty of books to sign, and most importantly, buy, right? So enjoy.
All right, thank you. Thanks everybody for coming. You're not here for me. You're here for Annabel.
Oh, I think they're here for you. All right.
So I just want to say genuinely, at this book, without any exaggeration, and Annabel knows this is one of my favorite books of the year. If you haven't read it, you're in for such a treat. Like, I loved it so much. I put it on my grid, which is a big thing for me. Like, I never posted my grid, and I gave you like a whole thing because I thought this was such a masterpiece. So I'm really excited. If you guys haven't read it, I have to apologize. I've never worn this dress, and it doesn't breathe, and I'm so hot that it was a mistake to wear. So if you see me like sweating, that's
keep the water coming.
I know, exactly. But let's start off. You want to tell us about the book?
All right. I will say that when Allison did post that thing on Instagram, and I hope you'll all read it because it's the most compliments I've ever gotten.
I love
it's
this
like
book
condensed.
so much.
It's like a compliment pill.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, I'd love to talk to her more about that. So
Yeah.
This is a dream come true. So has anybody read this book already? Oh, fun.
And I have
Okay.
questions on my phone. I'm not being rude. I just typed out some questions.
Yeah, she's just like texting.
I'm so bored already. Yeah.
I know, it's the worst. So this is the story of Allie Morris, who is a professional organizer whose life and home are both a total mess. She is a mother of three. She's recently she is grieving the loss of her mother, and she's just stuck in the way that people can be stuck over time. Like, she can't get out of her own way. And she gets it in her head that the way she's going to get unstuck is by having a summer romance with this absolutely adorable guy who is just in town for. And so that's how it starts.
So they meet in the dog park.
Yes, they meet in the dog
Love
park.
that. Thank
Yes.
you. Very realistic. A lot of people, like, before I moved here, I lived in New York. A lot of people, good relationships come from a dog park. And then
It's never happened to me.
Oh, well, okay. I actually still have friends like from 20 years ago from the dog park, but it's, it's a nice bond. It was very realistic.
Yeah.
And then Ethan is a skateboarder.
Yes.
He does not reveal everything about himself. How did you settle on like the skateboarding, the home organizing? I thought they were quirky enough to be distinctive, but not so oddball that you were like, this just feels like a romantic comedy setup. So can you take me through like how you developed that?
Yeah, that was actually all I had when I started writing this book. It was like, look at me, I've got an organizer and a skateboarder. What could happen? The organizing thing, I really wanted to write a book about how different our internal lives are from our external lives. I actually wanted to write a book about Instagram. That's how I started, with like all the stuff that we put out there and how it's just so different from the actual day that you had, and all the stuff that Instagram's trying to sell us all the time so that we can be happy. I wanted to write that book, but what I came to see is that her internal life and her external life were different in so many ways. And I just wanted to see her like reconcile that. That's what I wanted to happen to that person who I didn't know. The skateboarding thing, I don't know where the idea came from. I think that I heard a podcast that they were talking about skateboarders, and I got interested, and I kind of went down a rabbit hole about skateboarding, like chat rooms with skateboarders. They loved me. And I read a lot of blogs about skateboarding, and skateboarding is kind of spiritual. Like, it's very much about mastering something and then letting go. It's about like the control of your own body and the release to what's going to happen. You move your body, you go as fast as you can, you go up in the air, you're going to land on a piece of wood. Like, it's a crazy thing to do. You're probably going to get hurt. And it feels so much like falling in love. So I just was really committed to the skateboarding thing. My editor hated it.
Oh,
Yes. She's like, not sexy. Nope. Her direct quote is, no one wants to have sex with a skateboarder. So it was like,
disagree.
it was on me. I was like, give me one more chance.
I very much disagree.
And so I had to make him sexy enough that he could still be a skateboarder.
So that actually leads into literally my next question. I think you are particularly talented at writing men who are incredibly sexy and also sort of defy a lot of the romantic comedy tropes. Like he was very real to me, and I definitely felt this way with Nora Goes Off Script as well. You just have, I don't even know what the question is here. I know you have a bunch of sons, but how you develop these men who to me are as real, but maybe more the men we meet in our lives, which with no disparagement to good men in our lives, but I'm curious how you approach men, because I think you have a real talent, not in real life, but on the page. I think you have a real talent for writing, humanizing, winning, very sexy. I totally disagree with your editor. I thought he was so sexy.
Well, he was sexy by the end.
Okay.
At the beginning, he was
Sexy
just a
men.
skateboarder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
it's a really interesting question. How do I approach men? I do not approach them at the dog park. That's what I don't do. But I didn't grow up with a lot of men. Like I didn't grow up with my dad in the house. There aren't actually that many men in my family, but I have 3 sons. I have a husband. Just for the record, none of my characters are anything like my sons. I'm not writing romances about my sons. But it's possible, now that you asked the question, that I do see a lot of vulnerability in men. I don't think of, first of all, I don't really like a macho man.
right.
But I don't really think of men as like people who 100% have it all together.
Right.
I as a mom, I see
yeah.
men as like, life isn't as easy for them as we all think it is,
Right.
So maybe that's part of it, but I do like getting in a man's head.
Yeah.
And I think it makes for a more interesting story if the man's growing along with the woman.
Right.
Like, I hate the idea that we read romance novels to think men have it all figured out. We're total messes.
Right.
Let's be more like them.
But to that end,
what
and I love romance, so all kinds. This is not in any way a disparagement against certain books, but there is that notion that in some books the man is rescuing a woman, and I don't feel that way with your men. And so maybe that is what I'm attracted to, that they are growing together, and maybe that's what you're, consciously or unconsciously writing.
I don't like that book. I don't like the book that goes, I'm having a hard time.
Yeah.
I met the cutest guy.
Yeah.
We fell in love. He broke up with me. I was so sad. And then we got back together and everything's fine now. It's
Right.
like that book makes me feel so empty inside.
Well, you and I are also at midlife, and you write characters who I'm being
To be
generous.
nice.
Yeah. But you do another thing I appreciate about your characters is they do have life experience. Mm-hmm. She has gone through a divorce. She is grieving her mother. Still has conversations with her, and I think maybe a woman in her late 30s would not be interested in a man who was solely there to fix her. I mean, she has a full life.
Yeah.
Without, needing a guy.
Right. I think she's at the point of her life where she knows that that's not someone else's job to do.
Right. And ultimately, as a professional organizer, without spoiling anything, she has to get her own shit together, literally.
Yeah.
So
She does.
That's the way that you resolve that. And he has to do it on his own accord as well, with his, I would say, more emotional shit that he has to get together.
Yeah.
So
there's a chapter in this book where she cleans up her kitchen. And I'm not organized, to answer your next question.
I'm checking my questions. Yeah.
But it is the most satisfying piece of writing that I've ever done in my life. I did it in one sitting. Like I just wrote the whole thing. It just came out of me. And I was like cleansed by this cleaning of her kitchen. And it's because I spent so much time writing how messy her kitchen was. But by the time I was done, I was like, amen. I was very happy.
Encouraging. Yeah.
Felt good.
So I don't want to bore people with the writing process, but I loved the writing of this book so much. As you know, I raved about it. but often like on social media, you're like, oh my God, I forgot how to write a book. This is so terrible. How many drafts, like if we read the first iteration of this, would it resemble, I know, trust me, like, would it resemble where we are now, or what's your process to get to the finished?
It's so horrible. It's
Yeah.
like, I mean, honestly, it's the first draft is just me trying to see if there's a story there.
Right.
So I'm just writing, I'm like trying to get to some kind of an ending. And I had, in the first draft, I had all these homeless people living in his house. It was like this whole thing. And my editor's like, I don't think he'd want all those homeless people living in his house.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a process, and I'm doing it again right now. And it's kind of a mess. And it's like, it's almost like I have to have faith in the process that I've written 3 books that people have enjoyed, and I can write another one. But every time I start, it's like the very first time. It's like, wow, I wish I knew how to write a book.
Yeah.
Right? Because you've written 8. How many books have you written?
10.
10 books.
So, well, and many in between that I've thrown out, like in the middle where you put it down on page and you're like, I can't write more than this. I want to die. So you just throw it out. So, I mean, this book, I had to start over like 5 times, literally on page like 150. My editor was like, no. So
You're kidding me.
No, literally.
And then after you started over 5 times,
feelings about this book because of it. Yeah.
But it turned out fantastic.
It did. But I mean, I'm very pleased with it. But it just, I mean, I think you know this, and there's some writers in the audience as well. Once it starts working, you're like, okay, I know that it can actually work. But until you have gotten to that threshold, it's really unpleasant.
Yeah.
Like it's not enjoyable.
Yeah.
So
Finding the story is the hardest part. The writing of it does not feel hard. Like the making a sentence and the words that feel like the easier part for me. It's the making a story. And particularly if you're writing romance, the hard thing to do is you've got to break the people up. And you've got to break them up in a way that is not so epic that you can't get them back together.
Right. Which I thought you did really
Which is actually
well
really
here.
hard. I mean, there aren't that many reasons for people to break up that are forgivable.
Right.
Right? Like there are things where you go too far and it's like, I don't want to take him back. And then also in this particular book, I was so in love with the 2 of them together.
Yeah.
We were having such a good time. And I was like,
I was so devastated.
I was like, I don't want to do this. And I had like a mental block about what the thing was going to be because I didn't want to do it.
But it felt like a thing. Again, I don't want to spoil anything. I don't usually talk about like the second half of the book on one of these, but it felt like a thing when people get there. Again, these people and their circumstances felt so real to me that it felt like one of those things that maybe it just doesn't work. And people of a certain age have had relationships like that, where there's not a good guy, there's not a bad guy. It just doesn't work. Yeah. And that to me, again, it felt very real and in some ways more devastating than if somebody were just an absolute. It works, it works in that way. To ask you in terms of the writing about the dialogue, because I think your dialogue is just incredible. It is so rapid fire. The banter, it is so witty. Do you sit there like I have like I'm talking out loud. I'm having conversations with my husband. My husband's like, "Are you talking to me?" Like it's a whole thing. And I'm like, "Why are you on it?" Yeah, exactly. So, how do you construct that?
I type as fast as I can. So when I'm trying to write a conversation, I try not to think about it. I just type the words, and I don't do any like she said, any of that. I just like say the thing like I'm writing a script. And then that's kind of the faster I do it, the better.
Okay.
The better it will flow. And if somebody happens to walk through my room when I'm writing dialogue, I have to start over again.
Oh.
Because I hear it and then I lose it, and that person gets a look.
Oh yeah.
Not a talking to, but a look.
Your husband's smart enough to know not to do that.
You'd think.
Well, you're about to be an empty nester, so you
am.
might have fewer distractions. Do you think that's going to like affect your writing, or do your kid? Your 2 of your kids are out of the house. Do they bother you during the day?
No, not really.
Yeah.
I mean, my son, who's the only one I have at home, is 18, and he rolls in and asks for eggs once a day. I mean, I don't. Yeah, he doesn't demand a lot of me.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I feel like I'm going to have more time, which is going to make the next book so easy to write.
And is the next one a rom-com?
The one that I'm writing right now? Yes. Well, I was just thinking, is it a rom-com or is it a romance?
I consider
it's
yours
funny.
more
It's
of
kinda funny. Yeah, it's a rom-com.
I consider it
It's like this.
Yeah,
Is this a rom-com?
I consider it a rom-com. I don't know. Do people define it as? I mean,
Yeah.
And one thing I will say, obviously, in romance, there's closed door and there's open door. I think that you do closed door romance in such a beautiful way, in that like there's so much tension there, and we know what's happening when she sleeps over. But I just, again, like
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
This is the thing I've been trying to sell. It's like, we're all grown-ups.
Yeah.
We know what goes on. Do I have to write it?
Yeah. So I had to write
Been there.
I had to write it in this book,
Yeah.
and I've never written it. And it's fine. Again, I'm grown up, like it's fine. But it wasn't in my comfort zone. And like my parents read it and I was like, oh my God, this is a nightmare. But I felt like you got everything across that you needed to not in a less explicit, but still totally explicit way that we knew what was happening.
Well, thank you.
That
That makes me feel better about the half a chili pepper that I frequently get on Instagram for my spice rating. Like people actually doctor up a half a chili pepper just for me.
Do you think that there are plenty of readers out there who are fine with that as well?
That's been like the happiest thing about these 3 books, and in particular this book, is I have lots of mothers and daughters showing up, having read the book together. Right. And that's a really nice thing.
I told my I got this from my grandmother. And I told my daughter, I mean, she's read more explicit books because frankly, on Book Talk, a lot of them, are quite explicit. And in fact, she used to read Normal People for school this year. And I was like, okay, that's interesting, right? Wow. I know. I was like, okay, I guess I live in LA. I don't know. Like maybe that's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't read it.
It's Normal People. There's a lot of sex in it. And I was like, she's like, I need you to order me Normal People.
Everybody's writing this down.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, but to that end, it is a nice thing that you can share with,
It is. I think I'm loosening up a little bit. I feel like each of my books are a little like steamier.
I feel like this was,
but I'm not getting any steamier. I know this is kind of where we rest.
I mean, again, everybody has their own preference for what they do and don't like in romance, but I thought it towed the line really well between the lust between them was obvious. And I loved her with her hard pants and Costco underwear and all of that. She was such a relatable woman. And again, maybe that's just why this is just me. Like, I'm just praising your book now. I don't even have any questions. I just thought everything about her, as we get older, we get more comfortable, but we still want to be appreciated. But she, they were both wrestling. I wrote this down again, not so much a question. They were both still being protective of themselves because they had both been hurt in different ways. I just thought it was beautiful. Oh, I will ask you, he was a little younger than her in high school and had this admiration of her. Where did that come from? Like, it's almost a second chance romance, but not totally.
Be a person that she wouldn't remember. So he's her best friend's brother, but they weren't best friends in high school. So there are 2 women who went to the same high school who moved back to the same town. Yeah. And now they're best friends. And she's like, I do remember you had a little brother. Wasn't he kind of a weirdo? Scooter.
Yeah.
Quickly.
I thought that was really well done. It took me a minute to be like, oh, I see what.
But quickly we had to stop calling him Scooter because not hot. I mean, I
love it. Oh, wait, I don't want to spoil something. Forget it.
All right.
There's a scene in the pantry that I just loved. Like, I loved
that. It's my favorite scene.
I loved it.
I really loved being in that pantry.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would just go back to the pantry. Like
I think I read that scene like 3 times. She's like, I never thought you. She's like, oh, so good.
Oh, I just like the pantry. Boy, we should all go back to the pantry.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what I liked about that dynamic between them is it is a little bit of a fantasy to have a guy be so into you
Yeah.
and you're kind of falling in love with him
Mhm.
because I don't know. That's never happened to me. That just like him falling for her first felt kind of exciting to me.
Yeah. So I feel like that's all I have. I don't know if people.
I hope you have questions.
Guessing that people have a lot of questions.
I love this one.
Thank
I mean,
you.
they're all really good, but this resonated in so many different categories because of all her different relationships, whether it's her neighbor, the boyfriend, the husband, the kids. I mean, it just hit so many notes, and it was great. Are any of your books being picked up for to be filmed? Or
Yes,
anything?
sort of. And we're here. We're in Hollywood. So Nora Goes Off Script was optioned, and then there was a writer's strike, so then nothing happened, and that got really. This is Jessie Rosen's a Hollywood person here. If you haven't read The Heirloom, by the way, read it. That's Jessie's book that just came out. So that's been optioned. I didn't really hear anything, and then I kind of thought nothing was happening, and then a couple weeks ago they emailed me and said that they had a script and they have an actor who's interested and that something. And then it was all a big rush to do a lot of and that's kind of how
I
it
have
goes.
to say, as soon as I finished Nora Goes Off Script, because I assumed it was already in development, the first thing I did was email who played him. I mean, was Google who was going to play him because I was so obsessed with him.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to tell me.
Yeah, and I'll be disappointed whoever he is. There's
Yeah.
no one good enough.
Yeah.
And then there's interest in Same Time Next Summer. But I haven't heard anything about that either. It's like a lot of action and then you don't hear anything. And then I haven't heard anything about Summer Romance. I should ask.
Great.
Thank you.
Really, really good. I totally
Thank you.
enjoyed them. I just read them too quickly.
Thank you. Read them again. Who else? Yes.
I loved the relationship she had with her neighbor. It was Phyllis.
Phyllis.
Just wondering how you developed that idea to kind of have her older neighbor be somewhat of like a sister, mom, aunt kind of person in her life.
I honestly just appeared. But the way she ended up being in the book was sort of as a balance to Allie's mom. When I realized the thing with Allie's mom is she's a wonderful, wonderful mother, but she steps in too much for Allie and kind of in a way that sort of hindered her from like becoming herself, finding her own using her own voice. And I wanted Phyllis to be this person who was still there after her mom passed away, who's just that hope it works out.
Yeah.
Pull the weeds and let God do the rest. Like just that kind of a person who didn't give advice, who was just kind of there listening. And that's another generation of mothers. That's that other kind of mother who's like, be home by 5 o'clock or not.
Yeah.
That's how we were raised. And I wanted to explore that different kind of mothering.
And I meant to ask you this, because you said Phyllis just appeared. How many drafts do you tend to go through until it gets to the final?
8.
Okay. Yeah, it's about the same.
Yeah. Yeah, and 6 is like hot garbage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just unbelievable.
I feel like 6, you can sort of see that like it's going to be there. And then
I heard
7
a
is
woman-
a triumph, and then they come back and they're like, no.
Oh, you think 7? You think you're done?
Yeah, and then
You're
they
like,
come back and
"Nah."
they're like, no.
It's good except for all the things.
Exactly.
I heard saw a woman on Instagram, a very famous writer, say that she goes away for 3 weeks every year to write her book.
Oh.
And I was like, she must actually have a process, right?
I mean,
Because when people
what?
ask about the process is like, you write a book until it's better.
Do you set a word count a day?
No.
Okay, so you just sit down for however much time you can
As much as I
stand it?
can.
Okay.
Yes.
For me?
Yeah,
I'm
you.
sorry, I don't know what else
I know.
Oh, you're my favorite audience.
Did you guys want to be writers when you were younger? Like, how do you come to writing the first book and following through with it for both of you?
I for sure did. But I always wanted to. I just didn't know how, I didn't know what that life looked like.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a way to support myself. So I got a job. And I didn't write anything until I was 37. So I started late, and frankly, I didn't write anything that anybody read or cared about until I was 50. So, I did a lot of other things, notably raising a bunch of kids, before I did this. So when did you start, or how?
So I was always sort of praised for being a good writer, but like Annabel, the internet wasn't around, and it just felt like this crazy notion of how are you going to be a good writer? Like, how do you make a career out of this? Like, I didn't even understand it. So, through sort of stumbling upward, a variety of different jobs after college, I started freelance magazine writing. I ghost wrote a book for The Knot, which I don't even know if it's still around.
I remember The Knot.
Okay. So I ghost wrote like a flower book, and then I got a job. Then I got a magazine assignment writing about flowers for brides. And then I just started, it just snowballed. And so I did that for many years. And then I had my kids, and the magazine world is not what it is back then, but it was really frantic, and I just couldn't. I was juggling like six. I was saying to somebody recently, I remember being in the hospital room, having given birth to my son, on the phone with an editor, like trying to, it was just what you did, but like it. So
wow.
I started writing fiction. I sold my first book when he was 1, and I had written a manuscript that got me an agent that didn't sell, and then I wrote another manuscript, and that agent said, I think this will do your career more harm than good. I remember the quote specifically. And I was like, okay, well, I'm firing you. And I found a different agent, and we got 4 offers on that book. And so I'm just saying this. I'm sure that there are other writers in this room. And I've been with that agent for 20 years now. So
what was your first book that hit the New York Times list?
Time in My Life. That was my second book.
That was the one that was going to ruin your career?
No, that was my first book, which did pretty well. But then it did, it did fine, whatever, for a debut. But my second one, we actually moved to an imprint that is no longer around, Shea Earhart at Random House. It was the best. And I took a smaller advance because I wanted to be there so badly. And the lists are so hit or miss. Like, I just got really lucky back then. It was like People Magazine sold a lot of books, and so did like the Today Show hit. And I got them like the same Friday or something. So that's what it was. But so that's my, to Annabelle's point, it's never too late to start writing. The story of Bonnie Garmis, so, and I actually think, I'm 51, you're in your 50s. Women have amazingly rich stories to tell when you get older. So, not implying that that's like what you're older, you want to do it, but there's no.
She just called you old.
No, right. I don't even.
I saw it.
Yeah, no. I just mean like there's no. I don't know. There's no ceiling for when you can do it.
No.
Yeah.
Not at all.
So, yeah.
When do you write? When do you feel most inspired? Do you write every day, or do you write whenever something hits you?
I write whenever I can. Like yesterday, I could not write. I did not write. But most days, like if I'm really writing, I write 7 days a week. And I'd like to be up at 5.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You're not
No,
not
stay tuned for the rest of the day when I'm saying goodnight to my family at 9 o'clock. Like, I go to bed really early, but I like to be up with the sun. Feels really good. And I like to be in my quiet house with my dog and my coffee, and the sun's coming up. It's so good. And I like to write during that time before the day starts. And it's not just the day, it's like before my brain starts. And the part of your brain that tells you why you can't do things is like, it's a very natural part. It's like our survival thing. Like, don't jump off that cliff. You can't do it. That part for me wakes up later in the day. So I'm just like,
well, it's also like exercise. If you train yourself to just do it first thing, the thing you're dreading most,
yes,
it's done. So I wish that I could do that. When I'm really disciplined, I do write first thing in the morning, but I'm up at like 8. So that's not the same thing. But I actually write better at night because I am a night owl. So all things being equal, like if my kids are, one of my kids is in college, but like if my daughter's not home, I would ideally prefer to write from like 10 to midnight, but in this stage in life, you just can't.
I haven't seen myself between 10 and midnight in so many years. Like, not even on New Year's Eve.
I literally would, like, I changed my major in college so I didn't have to take a 9 a.m. class. Like, I cannot get up
Yeah.
any earlier than I do.
Wow.
Yeah. My husband gets up with the dogs, not me.
Oh,
Where's the craziest place where you found inspiration for a story, or where you randomly and maybe you thought of an idea?
in my bed watching the Hallmark Channel.
Oh, and I did want to say one thing. I do it differently than Annabelle. I set a word count every day, and I have to hit 1,000 words. Sometimes it's torture. If I've hit it and it's easy, I keep going, but I don't get up off my couch, or I don't give myself permission to do anything else until I've hit it. So that's very helpful for me.
Corinne, did you have a question?
Yeah, I wanted to know what kind of things you will borrow from your life. Emotional truths, names, personalities.
Good question.
Or what is off limits?
Oh, it's such a great question.
That is a good question.
Anything to do with my children, I like, sometimes I'll be writing and I'm like, ooh, that, and I just like scrap it. Names, it's so funny. The way I come up with my names is I try to think of names of people I don't already know.
Me
And
too.
so
Me too.
I like,
100%.
and I'm running out of names of people, like
100%.
guys I haven't dated.
Yeah.
We're running out. So
I dated that
the book
many.
I'm writing right now, their names are Jane and Dan, and I don't know why those are their names. They're the like what is Jane and Dan? But those are their names, and I can't change them. Experience, like actual things that have happened to me, I don't think that I've written about any of them. The emotional truth of almost everything in all of my books is probably all mine.
Yeah.
Or like just stuff I've observed from being a person on the earth. It's all like all that stuff.
I agree with her completely. The emotional stuff, the world around us, and we pull from that, or things that we feel. But particularly when I was more of a journalist, I never wrote about my marriage. I just felt like my husband isn't a writer. He's not interested in, like, he's like not on social media. That's just like not his thing. So that was always my line. And I wouldn't really write about, I have a very good relationship with my parents and brother, but I would never, some people like expose things about that, and I just wouldn't feel, I think for me, probably like you.
I think we should all like, this is your own thing. But I think we should.
Yeah.
I think we should just like kind of stick to our own emotional truth rather than, first of all, spilling the beans about somebody else or trying to like lay somebody else.
Right. I will say, like, I have a book called Cleo McDougal Regrets Nothing, and there's a teenage boy in it. And I was living with a teenage boy then. So I could take aspects of what you are dealing with as a parent of teens and incorporate that. Like his flippancy to me or whatever it would be. But so I would do that. But it was a very positive portrayal, and he hasn't read the book anyway, so it doesn't matter. So
that is the end of the story.
Yeah, that is like, I could write anything. Nobody would, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. That's right. Whole books about that.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Jesse.
I feel like you're first mentioning that this is your third book in 3 years.
Yeah.
And asking for a friend, how do you feel about that? Or do you actually feel like the churn is a benefit to your writing? This is, I know, a product of the way the publishing process go, but I'm just curious, like, the relationship with the speed of all of this.
Yeah, it's a lot of things. It's a lot of writing. In contrast, there was a decade where nobody was waiting for me to write a book. So I wrote a book for a decade. And let me tell you, that never saw the light of day because it was terrible. So there is something really motivating about having homework. There's something really motivating about having readers say, can't wait for your next book. Where it kind of makes you feel like, well, maybe I can. They think I can write another book.
Do you feel pressure though? Like when, like Nora Gross Off Script was so beloved, do you feel pressure then to satisfy the readers?
Yes.
Yeah.
That feels like a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. And the time pressure, to write a book in a year is a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not like a stack of ironing, which is something I like to do, Like if you have a stack of ironing and you stay there long enough, that stuff's going to get ironed.
Yeah.
A book, it's like it could not happen. Like you could write that book for all eternity and it could not come to fruition.
Yeah.
So that there's like a little bit of like tightrope walking there, and a little bit of like magic and faith that it's all going to work out, which is exactly where I'm sitting right now as I finish my book for next summer, where I'm just counting on something to click.
It 100% will, and I'm so excited.
Yes.
Part of what I love about your books is they take place on the East Coast, and I'm originally from Connecticut and New York, so they're deeply nostalgic for me. I'm just curious, do you visit these locations? Because like there's a part of the book where they go to Massachusetts. Like, did you actually like take a trip to Massachusetts for inspiration?
No, I'm so lazy. So actually, the book I'm writing right now takes half place in Santa Monica half the time. So it's Long Island and Santa Monica. So starts here, goes there, ends here. Massachusetts, I just figured there's probably a town like that there, so I made it up. I literally made that up. The town that this takes place is geographically exactly the town that I live in. It's a different vibe of a town, but it's like it's a town where you can sit on the water and look at New York City, which I liked for her. Long Island, like I've been to Long Island a lot of times, and I made up that town for same time next summer. What's kind of fun is the book I'm writing right now takes place in that same town, the same time next summer town. There's no like weird.
Are the characters back?
No, and we're not going to like run into them at a party. It's so corny. I can't do it. I tried to be that person, and I'm just not that person. I couldn't do it. Anyways, but yeah, I'll go and visit. Like I do a lot of Googling about fauna and flora, like the trees. Like what is it like there? But most of the places that I've written about, I kind of live there, so I don't have to research.
I like making places up because then nobody can tell you you've gotten.
You use a real place.
Oh yeah.
I use Santa Monica because I didn't think I could get it wrong because I'm from here. Like I understand this, but you write a Long Island town and you get that wrong.
Oh my God.
You're gonna get some mail.
I wrote Philly once where I went to college.
Oh, God.
And the Wawa goers were not happy that I said you could buy alcohol there. Like I still people were mad. And I was like, I thought you could buy alcohol there in college.
How could you not know where to buy alcohol? I went there too.
You're right. I feel like you can buy
gotta
alcohol
go
at
to like
Wawa.
this
I don't know.
Russian like beverage depot.
I don't know. People were mad. Sorry.
Who else has a question? In the back.
You said that you were kind of like toying with the idea of being an author, but didn't really want to go fully through with it. What was the push to finally like make that decision?
So the question is, what was the push to finally write something? I didn't have the confidence to do it. And when I was 37, my friend Elizabeth Wolfe said to me, we were talking about something, and she said, we should write a book about this. You know, people say stuff like that, and you're like, cute, whatever. And then she called the next day, and she was like, no, we should write a book about that. And it was actually her confidence that got us to write that book. Like I borrowed half of her confidence and wrote that with her. Nobody ever read that book either. But that was my first published book. And then I like had my own confidence from having done that. And then I wrote my first novel. So yeah, it was just like by the grace of somebody else that I did that.
And I just want to address that. When I was writing my story about firing my agent and all that, and my first manuscript took 4 years to write and it didn't sell. I was reading my alumni magazine, and there was a woman who was a couple years ahead of me who was on her second novel. She had written in like Sarah. Anyway, and I thought, if she's doing this and I'm saying I want to do this, why am I not doing it? And sort of akin to you, like you just need to take the leap, and the page is always blank until it's not blank. So it sucks, but just like the only way through is through.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember reading that and I was like, wait, Sarah Dunn. And I loved her, some of her books. And I was like, why is she only 2 years older than me and she's on her second novel? And So that's,
sometimes that just opens
Yeah,
the
it
door. It's
just-
like then all of a sudden you
maybe
can see
this will
yourself
open
doing
the
it.
door for people here. Like you just gotta do it.
And nobody's a genius doing
Right,
this.
and it
They're
might
just
be
people.
terrible the first time. I mean, it probably will be. So.
So you mentioned the skateboarding metaphor earlier, and then you've got another really beautiful one with the dog that I won't give away for those who haven't read it yet, but just like the metaphor about getting the dog. And I was wondering if you usually plan out your metaphors before you start writing, or if you find them along the way.
I do not. The metaphors in my books come by accident and from my. Yeah. Could you just? Yeah. Is that like or as or without that?
I don't know. I might be using the wrong word.
No,
No,
you're-
the whole dog
The
thing in
symbolism
this
of it,
book
yeah.
I stole from. I think it's
Separation.
That's a
No.
good one, Laura
no.
Zigman.
The dog thing is from a comedian whose name I can't think of right now. My husband would be horrified. And he did this whole bit that was very funny about the day that you get a dog, you have purchased a forward contract on tragedy. Like, and it's like, ha ha ha, that's funny. It's really not that funny.
Yeah.
But it's like so interesting that people get dogs.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a crazy thing to do. It's as crazy as skateboarding or falling in love. And the fun thing that happens sometimes when you're writing is you're writing about three things and then you realize it's all the same thing. And that happened when I was writing this book. I was like, that's weird. That's exactly the same thing. Because it's all kind of coming from your subconscious. A lot of dog stuff in this book. No dogs die. I would never.
Would never. Oh wait, I did have a dog who died in one book. Sorry. Amanda.
I wanted to ask, I know this isn't about this book in particular, because sadly, I gave myself homework and I failed.
Oh, that's okay.
But what books do you read in your free time? I know free time is a funny concept because nobody has any, but what books do you actually read and enjoy reading, and what are some of the ones that you look forward to reading in the same way that many of us look forward to reading yours?
Okay, so I mean, I love to read books like this, not when I'm writing because I don't like that stuff in my head because I am terrified that I'm just going to steal someone's sentence. So I don't. Left to my own devices, I like murder.
Oh.
I do. I love it. And if I'm going to get really specific, I'm going to say I like murder in Britain. I like them. The rich for murdering people, the better. Like inheritance or like an envy or something stupid. I love that. I love Lisa Jewell. She puts out a book, I think, every year.
Yeah.
Can I touch her? Oh.
Yeah.
I look forward to her books every year. Like she's writing for me.
Yeah.
Like just a gift. I like to read. And it also totally clear. It's like so different. Like I can't write dark. So it feels like I've just gone somewhere. Yes.
Do you ever, can you ever read for fun?
Yes.
What do you like to read for fun?
Murder. Yeah, I like to read murder for fun. I mean, I'll read everything. I'm gonna read The Women when I finish this book. That's next up. But I also read a lot in my genre because I'm supporting other authors to blurb their books and whatever. Yes.
Would you ever consider changing your genre, like after just to change it up and do something totally different? Or?
Well, maybe, but it would always be a love story.
Yeah.
Like I can't not write a love story. Like if I tried to write a mystery, there would be like the dead body and the coroner and the nurse, and it would be like.
So you wouldn't want
I'm doing that now. It's awful. That's how I feel like.
No.
You don't want to write about murder. You just want to read someone else's.
I like someone else's murder. I've tried to write murder. It got so silly.
It's really hard.
Oh my God. And yes. And all of a
We
sudden
have
the
some
cop was
excellent
so
suspense
cute.
writers here, but,
It's just, I'm a one-trick pony, I think. But it could get historical, but I'd have to do research.
I'm out. I won't do it.
Yeah. No, it seems like a lot of work.
All I can do is Google fauna. Like
Yeah,
that's
fauna.
the most research I'll do.
Yeah. Do they have
Yeah.
oak trees there? Okay, good enough
Do
for
they
me.
sell alcohol at Wawa? I don't know. Fine, whatever. One more.
Does your husband read your book?
My husband reads when I'm done, and I have to practically chase him around the house to read it. Like, it's time for you to read my book. And it's not because he doesn't like my books. He's just so nervous for me. Like, he just is. It's like he's a very private person, and I am putting myself so out there, and it makes him so. And so then he reads my book, and then he's like, it's good. Like, he's so relieved that it's not like just the hot garbage. I'm just like, yes. And I have one son who reads my books, and he actually reads like drafts and gives me
Your favorite
feedback. Yes,
obviously.
clearly.
Yeah.
Yes. The other two don't know how to read. I don't know. I don't know what their problem is. No, the other two rightly think it's creepy that their mothers are writing. And then I was hoping he'd kiss me. Like, it's just,
That's fair.
it's fair. Yeah. Yeah.
Is it your oldest son?
My middle son.
Oh.
Yeah.
The middle child.
Yeah.
The pleaser.
Yeah. He's good.
Yeah.
He's good.
There was another. Yeah.
I was just gonna ask. Personally, I love like how your books aren't like so. You're not like aggressive with the spice as a lot of romance books are. Was that a risk that you took when you decided you weren't really gonna write that much of a editor and you know you need to do this or what was that?
You know what I think it is? The question is about how deciding like how much spice to write, and let's both answer this question. I think it's like you're writing this book. Is there going to be a dead body or not a dead body? It's like a different kind of book.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like because I like to read a spicy book. It's not like I don't like them. It's just not the kind of book that I'm writing.
Yeah.
So yes, I take a risk by doing that, by losing readers who want a super spicy book. But I have a feeling I wouldn't do a good enough job to keep them anyways. They'd be like, what?
Yeah.
There's got to be something else. No, that's all I know. So I don't, it doesn't feel like a risk. I'm just writing a different kind of book.
Yeah, and I do think that there are, like, I know Suzanne Park is here. She writes closed door romance. Like, I can accurately say that, right? Yeah. I think there is a big readership for that as well. And I will read both as well. Like, I love a 10-page Emily Henry, up against a bookshelf, like, throw your back out. But also,
I do read it, and I'm like, they're so close to the bed.
Yeah.
Like, just get to the bed.
We're older.
Trust me on this.
Yeah. But I also love Annabelle's. And so there are, I was told that I should put a sex scene in this book. And we added in a very quick one on my one before this, because people were like, I love this book. I wish there were a little spice. It was already in first pass pages, meaning it had already been set up. And I wrote one, and they ended up cutting it down to like 2 paragraphs. I was like, okay, that's like, I can live with it. And actually, my daughter told me that one of her friends was reading it, and she like threw it across the room when she got there. She's like, oh my God, Amelia's mom is like, and I was like, I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It was traumatic, but I think for some authors like Emily Henry, it probably comes very naturally, and others.
Her sex scenes seem so easy.
Yeah,
like, wow, that wasn't so hard.
Like, unfair.
Yeah, Allie Hazelwood writes them exceptionally.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
What was the other one you said?
Oh, Allie Hazelwood.
Okay.
She writes very spicy books.
Has either one of you all taken writing classes? Like, do you think that, or do you feel like you're just getting to be better writers as you actually write?
I've learned more writing and reading than I was an English major, so I took writing classes in college, but I took some adult education writing classes, but I will say that just like being a reader, you know how a story goes, and you have all that language in your mind, and you're ready to go.
And to to really emphasize that when I wrote that manuscript that didn't sell, I was an editor, and she said it didn't turn out to be very good, and she said, I know what you're trying to do. Go read Good Grief by Lolly Winston. It was a big book at the time. And I read it as a writer, not just as a reader. And I understood like that my writing was too expository, that there wasn't enough of an arc. So if you want to write a book with an eye for how to develop it, I think you can read it, for enjoyment, but also as a writer, I agree with you. I mean, I'm not like a class taker in that way. And I suspect you're the same. Like every book, I feel like I try to improve my skill set. So it's just the doing for me, but not everybody's like that, but.
And even reading like craft books, like how to develop a character. I get so in the left side of my brain, which is like the worst part of my brain, that I can't write. Like I can't make anything up because I'm like,
it works for some people.
Yeah,
I've never been able to do that either.
Do you keep an outline of the story arc while you're writing? Like, do you even have that like written down? Like,
no.
I don't
You're a
either.
pantser?
Yeah, we're both.
Yeah, for sure a pantser. And then when I'm done, this is super efficient. Then when I'm done, I write an outline.
Oh, you do?
Killing it. Yeah.
Why?
I have no idea. I think my editor likes to have it.
Oh.
So that she
That's
can,
annoying.
then she can, because she's
No
not,
offense to editor.
she's
that's
not as
just like
far into the book, like her
extreme
head's not
stuff.
in it. So it's just like she likes to see
Okay.
it. And then she can say chapter 16 and I don't have to like,
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know. But yes, that's a ridiculous thing to do.
I will say, I think if you're writing a thriller or mystery,
For
and
sure.
we have several thriller writers here, for that, you do need to know where, like, the twist and the characters. But for what we do, it's so much more character-based that I think you can just go.
And it's the feeling.
Yeah.
It's like really you're just following the feeling through the book.
Yeah.
So, but there does need to be an arc of the feeling.
Yeah.
It's probably a good idea. Thanks. Thanks for the tip.
I will say I was writing a screenplay with a friend and he's like, no. He's a very accomplished screenwriter. And so he outlined, so we did it. And then I was like, oh my God, this makes it so much easier because then you just fill in the scene and you're done.
Well, should we do that?
No, I can't. He made me do it for this, but I can't do it. But anyway,
But maybe he could help us.
It was much more efficient than what I do. So,
all right, I'm listening.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you all share your drafts along the way with your workshop or friends or your editors?
I just share with my editor.
Okay.
I share with my editor and my agent. So,
Keep it simple.
Yeah, it is simple. So, I mean, it's great to have readers. It's great to have eyes on it. But you don't want to have too many people but this should happen in the Old West.
Yeah.
Maybe you should, and then you're like, Anybody else have a question? One more? That's it. Thank you guys so much for coming. This is so fun.
Thank you so much. We have plenty of books up front to purchase, and we got some markers to sign.
We'll stay right here.
I have this little relaxation gift for you.